Hi guys, should Labour be worried about Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick? That was the type of question put to Chris Bryant when he appeared on the Sophy Ridge show. Now Chris claims that his party isn't really worried as both represent chaos. He also predicted that Badenoch and Jenrick would obsess over the European Convention on Human Rights and immigration. Chris also says that the Tories and the future leader will unlikely look at why the party lost and instead double down on side issues. And then Chris tried to be nice. Have a listen to this.
This is the result of the latest round of the Conservative Party leadership. We know the final two now, Robert Jenrick, Kemi Badenoch. Who do you think could cause most trouble for Labour?
I'm not sure that any of them can, and I think this process has shown it, because I don't think they've really at any point shown that they understand why they lost the general election. You know, the chaos, the hating one another, the obsession with Europe, and banging on about Europe, and now it looks like their leadership contest in the final stages is all going to be about whether they leave the European Court of Human Rights. The fact that nothing works in this country, you know, spending commitments that didn't amount to anything, problems with economic growth and the biggest fall in living standards in our history. I don't think they've understood any of why they lost, and that's the first prerequisite for an opposition. You've got to do that first. And I suspect, I may be wrong about this, but my guess is that James cleverly got a bit complacent, didn't end up ringing round everybody who voted for him last round and just thought, I'm a shoo-in now. And it's complacency which does for politicians in the end.
That's interesting. So that's your theory on why the numbers seem to change.
Yeah, there's that. And another bit maybe, which is, I spoke to a couple of Tory MPs last night, and they were both obsessed with voting for somebody who wasn't their preferred outcome, but to keep the other person out. So I think there's still a bit of hating. Anyway, look, it's their issue, private grief, but, you know, they both seem to me to lead with their chins, and both of their chins are made of very fine porcelain.
Interesting. Well, it's been a rollercoaster of a race. I'm sure there'll be a few more loops.
Somebody's joked in the Labour Party whether we have to declare this as a gift.
Oh, what, because the whole thing is such a gift for the Labour Party?
But, I mean, the message I just said about complacency for them applies to us too. You should never take your opponents for granted just because they look dim-witted doesn't necessarily mean that they can't land punches.
Interesting. What, so you think that they look dim-witted then? Is that what you're saying?
I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well that's going.
I could come up with much worse than dim-witted to describe Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. Now, so is this a problem for Labour? Is this going to be a concern for the Labour Party? I think there is, on the surface, not really much to be worried about. These people represent an extreme element within the Conservative Party and an extreme element amongst voters. So at the moment, Labour have a massive majority. There's nothing really Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick can really do. But it all comes down to narratives. So if the narrative is being set by Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch or Robert Jenrick, this will be a problem for Labour. They need to be setting the narrative, because if Farage is constantly talking about immigration and the government is talking about immigration, Farage will win on every occasion because he's sitting on the sidelines. He can talk about how, well, if I was in power, I would stop the boats. Oh, look at the population is increasing, it's because of immigration. There are no houses available for young people because of immigration. The NHS waiting list is not coming down because of immigration. So Farage will use immigration as a tool to convince the public that everything is going badly because of immigrants, and the only party, the true party that can stop this is Reform UK. The Tories were in charge for 14 years, they did nothing. Labour are in charge now, what are they doing? Nothing. This will be his narrative. And Labour have to be able to thwart that. They have to set the narrative. And who's going to run with that narrative as well? It's going to be Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch, because they're going to be pandering to Farage. They will be speaking the same language as him, because they're focused not on winning people back to the Conservative Party that went to Labour or went to the Liberal Democrats. Their focus will be on reform. So you'll have the Conservatives pandering to reform. You'll have Reform talking about how, well, if we were in power, we would fix everything. And you're going to have Labour trying to set out their narrative. Now, the media, of course, is right-wing, most of it, and it's going to listen to the Conservatives and it's going to listen to Reform UK. It's going to amplify Farage. And this is something that Labour have to be very careful about. So while Farage represents very little in Parliament and the Conservatives are in a minority, you have to keep an eye on the media. And media reform needs to take place in this Parliament or in the next Parliament. Labour need to do something about that, because you have right-wing press attacking Labour when they're doing good, attacking Labour when they do badly, but amplifying people like Farage and propping up the Tories and ignoring their corruption and instead focusing on Labour. So at the moment, Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch will not really be a problem, but this could create some issues for Labour later on. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.